Same state, same constitution, same mentor, and yet two completely different visions of how to run an empire. Today, we are talking about two of the most consequential leaders in early Islamic history, Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second rightly guided caliph, and Uthman ibn Affan, the third rightly guided caliph. Both were close companions of the Prophet, both inherited the same institutions, and both presided over one of the fastest expansions in world history. But the way they governed, almost opposite. Let's set the scene first. The rightly guided caliphate was a highly organized constitutional state that emerged after the death of the Prophet, with its capital in Medina. In just a few decades, it did not just dominate the Arabian Peninsula, it conquered two great superpowers of the ancient world, Sassanid Persia to the east and the Byzantine Empire to the west. And Umar and Uthman were at the heart of that expansion. Most of these conquests happened on their watch, which means the responsibility of building institutions for a rapidly growing empire fell squarely on their shoulders. They both rose to that challenge, but they did it in fundamentally very different ways. So let's break down the three biggest differences between their governance models. The first difference is about who they chose to run the provinces. Umar's answer was simple: piety first. He preferred the early converts, senior companions of the Prophet, who had spent years under his direct guidance. To Umar, a governor's most important quality was moral integrity. Legitimacy, in his view, came from religious seniority. Uthman had a different calculation. He needed people he could trust with management, administrators with sharp fiscal skills, and real experience running complex systems. But there was a problem. There was a shortage of that kind of talent. Most of the literate, administratively capable people in the region came from Banu Umayyah clan, the very clan that fiercely opposed the Prophet before the conquest of Mecca. They had eventually accepted Islam, but they hadn't spent years in Prophet's companionship. They were skilled, they just lacked religious legitimacy in the eyes of many. Uthman appointed them anyway, because his model of governance required people with sharp administrative instincts. Which brings us directly to the second difference. Under Umar, power lived in Medina. He had built a body called Shura, essentially a consultative council made up of senior companions to advise on major decisions. And Umar did not just set broad policy and step back, he micromanaged. He would send detailed strategic instructions to generals who were actively on military campaigns hundreds of miles away. The center was in control of almost everything. Uthman fundamentally disagreed with that model. His argument was practical. The empire had grown too large, too fast, and too diverse for one city to sensibly govern all of that. Different provinces had different geographies, different populations, different economies. Let them make their own decisions, empower them, give them responsibility. So Usman shifted decision making power outward. Under his caliphate, provincial governors could even declare military campaigns even without the authorization of the caliph, something unimaginable under Umar. And here is where a critical flaw emerged. Uthman delegated that power before he built institutions to handle it. There were no provincial councils, no local shura bodies, no formal framework to govern and make decisions. All that authority landed in the hands of individual governors, and concentrated, unchecked power in the hands of a few men is always a problem. The third difference comes down to economic philosophy, specifically what to do with the vast, fertile lands of the newly conquered provinces. Egypt and Iraq were very valuable. They sat along great rivers, had rich soil, and were capable of enormous agricultural output. Naturally, the Arab soldiers who had fought to conquer these lands expected to be rewarded with land grants there. Umar said no. He was cautious. He worried that large scale Arab settlement in these new provinces would destabilize them, that it would create resentment, displace existing populations, and ultimately undermine the state. For Umar, stability came before growth. Uthman disagreed. He saw economic opportunity and wanted to seize it. Lift the restrictions on land purchases, allow settlement to happen, and you get a productivity boom. More output, more tax revenue, and stronger empire. To him, it was a risk worth taking. The problem again was implementation. The process of awarding land grants was delegated to provincial governors, and without proper oversight, transparency broke down fast. The consequences of that were severe. So, what does all of this tell us? Here were two men working within the same constitutional framework, shaped by same formative experiences, facing the same empire, and they produced almost entirely different systems of governance. One built towards the center, the other pushed outward. One valued religious integrity in his administrators, the other valued managerial skills. One chose stability, the other one chose growth. History does not move on autopilot. The personal philosophies of individual leaders matter enormously. And Umar and Uthman are a fascinating reminder that sometimes the most consequential variable in history is not geography or resources or timing, it is the mindset of the person at the top.